Autodesk's developing unit here in Israel, in Tel Aviv. He serves as global director of the Autodesk BIM 360 family of cloud-based design and construction products. He holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering and management from the University of Tel Aviv. And following his service, military service in an intelligence unit, a technology unit in the intelligence corps, and a few years in the Israeli aircraft industries, he joined a startup which was called Visual Tau, right? Visual Tau, I pronounced it already, as a partner. And as these things happen, when Visual Tau was acquired by Autodesk, Ilai ended up working for Autodesk, established the development center here in Israel, and which now numbers, which I was surprised to hear, some 140 employees of Autodesk developing products here in Israel. At Autodesk, Ilai has served as product manager in the worldwide AutoCAD group and a product development group manager for cloud-based architecture and fabrication products. And today, which I think is wonderful that these products are being developed here in Israel, today Ilai leads the BIM 360 platform with a development team that's spread from Israel to China, from Europe to the US. But they're developing Autodesk's main line of BIM products for construction processes. And that's exactly what we'll hear from you about.
Thank you, Rafael. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, pleasure being here. I'm glad you could stay. So my name is Ilai Rotbaein. I manage the local Autodesk office here in Israel, the R&D side, and also manage the BIM 360 operations globally at Autodesk. As Rafael mentioned, BIM 360 is our product for the construction line, but we're not necessarily just going to talk about product today. We're going to talk about BIM, because that's what we're here for, right? So many of you, I'm sure, know what Autodesk is, right? We're a software company. Our base is in California, and we've been here since 1982. And we actually started from 2D. As you all know, AutoCAD is probably the most famous brand that Autodesk has. And around the end of the 90s, that's where Autodesk acquired a small company that did something they didn't call it BIM at the time, but they didn't really know what they have. And few people had a vision, and they picked it up, and that ended up being Revit, which is now one of the known products for BIM standards at the world, and of course other products in the AEC market like Navisworks, also owned by Autodesk. And what I'm going to talk about today is actually the evolution of BIM. So I'm hoping that by the end of the session, you understand that we're actually just starting to explore the value that BIM provides. There's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more opportunities that are up ahead that haven't been explored yet, and I'm sure you're all going to be part of that journey. So what is the opportunity? If you think about where we are in BIM, many of you know the concept of 3D BIM. 4D BIM was discussed a little bit today. There's actually 5D BIM, there's 6D BIM, and there's 7D BIM, right? So what do those concepts actually mean? 3D BIM is what most of you probably know, right? When you work in Revit, when you work in Tekla, that was mentioned here in other products, you have the concept of the 3D space, the 3D graphics, but also the information at the object level, right? Certain attributes, and the model itself has intelligence. While AutoCAD is a great product, it has no intelligence whatsoever. It doesn't know that a wall is a wall, doesn't know that a window is a window. In the BIM products, you actually know what these are, so there's certain workflows that open up to you. But this is just 3D BIM. What's 4D BIM? 4D BIM is actually taking the element, the dimension of time, and incorporating that into the model. So things like scheduling, production tracking that we're going to talk about are all associated to the element of 4D BIM. Doesn't stop there, though. There's also the concept of 5D BIM. 5D BIM brings the element of money, right? A big and important element of every construction project. How do we actually associate the cost to the elements of the model? How do you know how to link different elements to cost elements, and how do you know how to track that over time? So that's when different estimations workflows come into place. And there's the 6D BIM, which talks about sustainability, so doing certain analysis about how your building will perform from an energy perspective and lighting perspective and other perspectives as well. And there's 7D BIM that is all around facility management, right? So identifying the performance of the building over time. If you know a little bit of the statistics of a construction project, you know that the percentage of design, do you know how much the cost of the design to an overall cost of a project? You know, in percentage, how much is that? Anyone know? including the facility management, for the whole life cycle of a building? Do you know? Less than 1%. So the number is about 2 to 3%, less than 1%. That's probably the right numbers. That's the cost of design. The cost of a construction project, do you know how much is that from the overall life cycle of a project? Half, I hear. 14, I heard. So the cost of a construction project is estimated around 20 to 25% of the whole construction life cycle cost. Now, that leaves us with over 70% that is the operation, right? So if you think about cost, you think, oh, constructing this building is going to be really costly. Well, actually, that's just a small portion of the pie. Most of the cost of the project is going to be in operating it. So think how much money and how much saving and how much efficiency can be gained over there. And that's all about 70 BIM. So when you think you're starting to explore BIM, actually think about all these aspects and think about where we are today. So the evolution of BIM. Maybe some of you have heard the concept of the standards that was thrown in around here. So BIM level 0, BIM level 1, BIM level 2, BIM level 3. Let's explain those for a minute because actually those are kind of important. And those are the trends that we see globally. So in the 1990s, even actually earlier than that, the concept of BIM level 0 started, which is basically talking about very simple drawings, right? Not too sophisticated. In the 2000, we started talking about models. So that's when 2D and 3D came into play, still in a very basic shape. I mentioned the case of the Revit acquisition that Autodesk have, but other products have been in that market as well. And around 2010, actually a little bit earlier than that, that's where BIM Level 2 started. BIM Level 2 is a standard that was adopted by the UK government and other municipalities within Europe. Europe is, by the way, by far the geography that leads the way on BIM adoption. And excuse me if there's anyone here from the US or anything, but I think everyone knows the truth that Europe is leading the way. And specifically, UK has also been taking this very seriously. The UK government has actually mandated 2 years ago that all projects owned by the country, by the government, are actually going to be at BIM Level 2, and additional projects are also adopting it. So even non-public buildings are adopting that standard. If you want to sell software today as a vendor in the UK, you have to make sure you are applying and compliant with the BIM Level 2 standard. But then there's BIM Level 3, and BIM Level 3 incorporates the information of building life cycle management, right? So understanding how the operation of the building is going to sustain over time, and how can you optimize that. So let's look about which product actually fitting each one of these levels. It's an interesting view. All right, so this is the opportunity, right? So on BIM Level 0, there's AutoCAD, there's other products that play in that space. In Level 1, there's Tekla, there's Revit, the AutoCAD itself as well. There's other products that play in the BIM Level 2 standard as well. That's really understanding the information that within the model. There's a few other brands that also play in that market. And shockingly, there's no one in Level 3. All right, so you remember what we talked about, 70% is in the cost of the operations, and no product actually does that today. Or should I say, no product does that today well, or in a place that it's widely adopted. So just think about the opportunity that lies here within BIM. And I'm going to show you some workflows that fit to it, but I'm actually going to talk about more around construction. When you think about construction and the value that BIM brings to construction, you walk around the globe, and I travel a lot and meet with construction companies, and I ask them, all right, so what value does BIM get you? This is a survey done in 2015, so quite a while ago, by McGraw and Hill, that went and surveyed 500 general contractors. So this is from the construction business, not from design business. I'm going to focus on downstream BIM, so just contractors and owners. And they were asked about whether BIM contributed to any one of these elements. So 72% of them mentioned that BIM brought greater cost predictability. So you heard Erez talk about it in the Ministry of Defense, right? 85% of them talked about BIM providing improved scheduling, improved schedule prediction. 85% talked about fewer errors. 92% of them talked about a more optimized design. And 98% of them talked about better understanding. So when asked about what the value that BIM brings, and if you think about, all right, I'm just going to stay in my 2D world, the numbers speak for themselves, right? The value is very clear. The ROI is very clear. There's a reason why we're here today. There's a reason why BIM is so popular and being talked about. It's because of that value, and we're only starting to explore the value, if you kind of think about the previous slides that I mentioned. All right, so what I want to talk about now is some of the workflows that happen around BIM in construction and operations, and I want to kind of take you through a few examples that how those are being done in different products to really emphasize what value BIM brings to the table. Historically, construction has been an industry of papers. Still is. If you go to construction site, you'll see papers. Even the most advanced construction site, you'll see papers, and there's a good reason why that will happen. But construction technology has actually been there for a while. It's been very popular in the design space. In the construction space, it really boomed around 2009, 2010. And the reason that it becomes so popular in these years is actually the smartphones. So there were quite a few software companies, kind of speaking from a software vendor perspective, that have been trying to provide software to this industry, to the construction industry. It's been a very, very hard sell because it's not an easy industry for all the reasons that you know. But the fact that the phone form factor has come into play and become so popular on either phone or a tablet really opened up the market. If you see the amount of startups that are out there today, if you see the amount of VCs, venture capitalists, actually investing money in construction, it's quite booming. I think we have a representative here from Trimble that just invested 500 million, acquired in 500 million, a company called eBuilder. Econex was acquired by Oracle by $1.2 billion. So the numbers are quite large, and this construction is growing quite significantly. And the reason that those numbers actually occur and companies actually estimate the value of BIM in such a high numbers is because the transformation from paper to digital had brought that value. And here's a few examples. So Chuck talked about clash detection. Clash detection, for those of you who had a chance to work with that process, is actually quite a complex operation. Right? You use different tools. Navisworks is one of them, but there's many tools that do clash detection. And it's usually a job that's being done by a BIM coordinator or the VDC manager, and not a lot of people can do clash detection. The future of clash detection is actually automating the process, right? So here's a video that shows how you can do it in a SaaS-based software. This is done in BIM 360, actually, in this case. And you can see how I section the model, how you can get information of the model, and how I can do clash detection automatically with just 2 clicks. All I did is upload the model, like I upload a file to Box or Dropbox, and I will take those 2, 3, 6, 10 Revit models, or Navisworks models, or Tekla models, or whatever, and I will know how to identify those changes, those clashes automatically. So work that traditionally has been done by a specific person, by a specific expert, that took hours to deliver, and it took hours to identify what are those clashes, is now taking seconds and can be done by anyone. And this could be commoditized, right? Because everyone has access to these days to a computer, and everyone has access to a mobile phone. So there's no reason why I cannot send this information to my architect, to my engineer, and have them solve that clash. And then incorporating that information back into the Revit model, back into the Revit authoring tool to make the changes. And if you think about the automating process that incurs, is actually I have a cycle in which the architect or the engineer submits the changes that they done on their MEP model, structural model, whatever. The software automatically does the clash detection on the cloud, pings me if I have any clashes with other disciplines, and I have to resolve them before I submit them to the execution. So the amount of value that this process and this automation brings is huge. When we ask customers about the value that clash detection brings, they usually talk in millions, right? When you're talking about big projects, I had a nice example that I heard from AECOM a few months ago where they built a big stadium in the US, and they had to install an escalator. And it was a very specific escalator that was not manufactured in the US. They had to order it from abroad, and that escalator had to, of course, connect with the floor leveling. And they did a certain calculation about how to do it, and then they run the clash detection, and they understand there's a clash of about half a meter between the escalator and the design. And they had to change it and only then order the escalator. If they haven't done that analysis, they would have ordered about 10 of these escalators for the model, and the projected cost for that would be $15 million waste. So just by doing that clash detection, they saved the project $15 million. So when you think about construction projects and how important they are, that they stand on time and on budget, think about these examples. Another example that I really like about the value that BIM brings is quantification. Quantity takeoffs has different words, was mentioned here as well, and that's where some of the elements of 4D comes in, and more or less. When you think about quantification, so quantification would be ktav kamuyot, right? This is a process that today happens mostly on 2D. But why? Why does quantification have to happen on 2D? If you think about it, most of the information, 80–90% of it, is already in the BIM model. Why can you not automate the process? Why can you not make the computer do 90% of the work and have you do the remaining 10%? Element, another workflow that I would like to share with you is progress tracking. So this is where 4D comes into play really hard, and also 5D BIM. So remember, time and money. Progress tracking is an interesting concept done today usually by the schedule that you get from Microsoft Project or your P6 implementation. But when you think about it, there's actually a lot of information in the BIM model that tells you how the process should be built. There's a lot of intelligence there. If you can harvest that intelligence and bring it and integrate that within the timeline of a project, there's a lot of value in there. There's really good products that do it today in the market, and yet they have not, I think, harvested the real value of that workflow. This is a nice example. This is, in this case, Navisworks. You can see that the schedule here is listed at over here, and then you have the progress of the model. And when you move over the timeline, you can see which phase of the project you're at and which construction phase you should be in. So you can actually see the elements with an animation building on time. You can track where you are. Am I behind schedule? Am I tracking on schedule? And what are the gaps? And whether I need to make changes to my schedule to fit it. So a lot of technology could come here and really change the game. Field execution, that's probably where we see the majority of technology coming in these days. How do I take the information on my phone and my tablet and apply it to field workflows? This is an example of the BIM 360 product line. There's more products that do it in the market today. And the idea is, instead of having my paper plans dragged around from place to place, I also have my phone in my pocket or my iPad in my jacket, and I can pull those up and I can see what information I want from the drawing. Now, it's not only 2D drawings, but also 3D drawings. So I can orient myself in the space. I can get information of certain properties that I need to install. I can do a walkthrough animation within the model to see how I expect this model to be when I finish the pieces. I can do an analysis of the as-builds versus the as-designs. There's a lot of workflow that actually fit into it, and they fit to every construction industry, whether I'm in civil construction, commercial construction, industrial construction. All of these have different workflows that are based on the fact that I have that information at my fingertips at all times. Think about the BIM model. Who were the people that actually understood the BIM model? It would be very few individuals that are usually working in the office. If we can get that information to the people on site that actually do the work, and if they have a query, if they have a question, they don't need to raise an RFI. They don't need to ask their superintendent on how to execute something. They open their iPad and the information is there. Think about the savings. Think about how much errors could be saved.